All right, good afternoon. I have a 4 o'clock, so I know I normally hang out and answer questions for like an hour afterwards, but I'm going to literally be running out the door today. So there's a few items to cover. Hi, everyone. A few items to cover, so hopefully we'll get through as quickly as we can, and if folks have questions, we'll answer as many of those as we can. Conditional use permits have kind of tapered off. BOP permits have I guess also kind of slowed to a slow trickle, but they do continue to come in. I think the biggest kind of thing since we last met are sorry, next on the agenda, I'm skipping ahead. The equity program is scheduled to be heard at the mayor and council on July 12th. What they're going to be hearing is a resolution for a fee waiver, as well as an outline of the program and the study on arrest data that the city conducted. Again, that's June 12th. I'm sure you guys are all aware, but the BCC, the state updated all of their regs and included a number of changes in there. Some of the biggest stuff is really around shared security, shared spaces, including security. Yeah, so common areas are okay. Shared bathrooms can be okay. I guess as you read through all of the regs, my caveat to all of this is if you're planning on using shared spaces or shared security areas in any way, shape, or form, I'd run it by us and Sergeant Juan before you get too far out ahead. I'll say we haven't had a lot of time with these, neither have you, but I think our police department still has some reservations around, especially as it relates to delivery and completely shared security systems. So while I'm optimistic that utilizing some of these shared common areas, entranceways, lobbies, restrooms are going to be possible. I think that there's also a chance that it's also going to require individual DVRs inside the suites, right? So there could be a shared network of cameras that do the building itself and any of the shared common areas, but if there's a separate premise there that is internal to that building, we may be looking at things that require that own camera be controlled and recorded inside the suite. So before you get really far along on some sort of shared workspace, make sure you're talking to us and Sergeant Juan. Delivery went up from 3,000 to 10,000. I think the other kind of big change in there was having to have all of your orders basically kind of pre-sold, if you will. So no more just leaving with $3,000 worth of stuff and drive around and hope until you sell it. This is one that Chief Ajax hinted to me several months ago that they were going to change, and I'm glad that they did. You no longer have to put stuff in a car to drive it from one door and then halfway around the building to the other. You can actually put it in a cart or carry it through a door. And yeah, no duplicative samples for testing labs. That's probably a really good thing because the volume of cannabis that they were pulling on large samples was kind of ridiculous. Dispensary owners. Number of you have called in or emailed wanting to know about selling T-shirts or hats or whatever the case may be. You're good to sell that as long as it stays within the 150 square feet. I know that there at one time was a prohibition against that, but that was changed a little while ago, and I guess just wasn't really kind of highlighted in there. Has anyone not heard about the cap that was adopted by the council last week? 2 weeks ago? What came before them was an item to limit the amount of cannabis cultivation that also included distribution, so a cap of 2.5 million square feet of cultivation or distribution within the Power In Alliance area. It also initially had a distance requirement between other production facilities for areas not Power In, so the rest of the city. The 600-foot buffer was taken out by the council, and it was requested that staff return with a more, I'll just say, thoughtful policy of maybe how to address undue concentration as it relates to production facilities outside of the Power In Alliance area. We currently have about 2.9 million square feet of applications in the Power In Alliance area. And we're going to stop issuing conditional use permits at 2.5. So there's that. Yep, so the same zoning requirements still apply. Those haven't changed for areas not inside the Power In Alliance area, and there's no additional distance or buffer requirement. Is this for delivery? There's also been a request by the Power In Alliance area to limit the amount of business operating permits as it relates to delivery. That item has not been requested by council yet, but I flag it for all of you to put it on your radar as something to watch. Registered cultivators, and I guess this kind of goes for manufacturers that are, or anyone who's operating, but especially our registered cultivators. If you are a registered cultivator and you are operating, please get your building permit in. I can't ask politely enough, but politeness is about to run out, and you're about to run into a brick wall and get a red tag on the outside of your door and be shut down. Period. Get your building permit in. If you want to become legal, then become legal, please. But that includes submitting your building permit. It means doing everything that the fire department tells you to. But we need you to submit those building permits. If you don't, we are going to have a really difficult time authorizing your annual permit to the state. So if you're going through our process and you're applying for your CUP or you've obtained your CUP, you have your temporary permit, all that stuff is great. But if you haven't submitted your building permit when the state calls up and says, hey, are they good? We're going to say, nope, they're not. So you can sit on that permit, and then your temporary permit's going to expire, and you get a red tag from the building department on the outside of your door. And then you're not going to be able to operate until you've done all of the work that's in there, which means obtained your building permit and obtained your certificate of occupancy. So please submit your building permit. Fire. Hi. Come on down. If you don't know, Captain Elizabeth.
Senior.
Okay, close.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth. I think I've spoke with a lot of you folks probably. Elizabeth McDowell, Senior Fire Prevention Officer. So like I say, I think I've spoken with quite a few of you all. The big thing we're seeing right now is that July 1st, the California Fire Code has a whole new set of requirements that we're seeing that have to do with Chapter 38, which is the plant extraction. So if you're doing manufacturing, there will be requirements that you need to make sure that it's the first time somebody has told me I'm not loud enough. Wow. So for the Chapter 38, you need to make sure that you're following for plant extraction if you're manufacturing. We also have out of Chapter 9, there are items that address your fire alarm, the CO2. So we're really stressing that you need to have a fire protection engineer or a mechanical engineer. And we're currently working on drafting a third-party inspector document to provide to help give a little bit of guidance with that. Did you have a question?
Yeah, just if you've already been approved.
Did you go through the building department? Was it for your CUP or was it for a COM number? Do you know? CUP does not constitute a building permit. That's a big, I'm glad you asked that question, because that's one of the biggest things we have that's kind of confusing is people think by getting your conditional use permit that that's a building permit, and that is not the case. If you've gone through and got your conditional use permit, that's just to condition being able to do that use in that building. It's not conditioning you to make any changes like adding walls, putting in a sprinkler system. You still need to get a building permit for that work. When you submit, they are going to require them now because in order to make it through that process, the timeline will take you 30 days usually. You're welcome. So just please be very cognizant when you guys do your plans and come in for those building permits that you're looking through the fire code, or at least that your design professional is. Yes, the cultivators also we're seeing a lot of the CO2 burners in the facilities. Currently, there are no known listed units for the burners that we're seeing like hanging in the facilities. I do know that I believe there's one company that's trying to get them UL listed. So we're seeing a lot of facilities that are going through multiple plan reviews in order to find basically like a standalone type of unit. So those are kind of some things to look out for in your submittal packages. Anybody have any questions? No? All right, well, feel free if you guys do, as you come across these, please let us know. We're happy to help you guys get through it.
We are really trying to get everyone through this process. I know it is complicated, and but the CUP is a land use entitlement. You need a building permit, a CUP, and then an operating permit from the local and from the state. So by the time you get done with this, you're going to have essentially 4 approvals for any particular building or business. Nobody wants a cease and desist order. If you have submitted a conditional use permit and business operating permit, you may or may not have already received a visit from Ben Rollins hiding in the back. He has shared and delivered a business tax occupancy certificate to a number of businesses out there, but the bottom line is if you're operating, you need to pay the 4% tax. Yes. It is the business. It's the business. But if you're operating, you owe the tax. Questions on that? I know, yes.
So that is after you've received your business operation?
As if you were operating, if we show up and knock on your door and you've got a bunch of plants inside or a bunch of extraction equipment or a whole bunch of inventory and you're clearly operating a cannabis business, you need to pay the 4% tax. I'll do it. I'll do it.
Grab the mics, but.
All right, well, we can come back to that one, obviously. But that's the bottom line. Yep. Any questions, you can contact Rennell in the revenue department, but it's a simple form, and you can remit the tax monthly. We're making some changes to our distribution permit. Trying to, I think, clean it up a little bit, and amending to the state. We are adding, we are tiering the distribution centered license based on gross receipts. That still requires a conditional use permit, and we are adding a type S for self-distribution for small manufacturers. This would be for that small manufacturer with gross receipts of less than $100,000 that is also exempt from the conditional use permit process. This would allow them to do self-distribution of their own product and remain exempt from that conditional use permit. We're also adding the transport only. This doesn't come with the administrative privileges, just like the state, of taxation or testing. I guess the vernacular difference between us and the state is when the state talks about self-distribution, they really mean self-transportation. So their state self-distribution permit really isn't a distribution permit in the true sense, in that it doesn't come with the administrative privileges of taxing and testing. It really is a transportation only permit. And so we've created this one, which is a distribution permit for those small manufacturers, and a transportation permit for those either holding other permits or I guess it could be a standalone cannabis transportation company as well. Late penalties. This item went before the Budget and Audit Committee. No soup for you. Went for the Budget and Audit Committee this week. All the days blend together. It passed. I expect it to probably pass at City Council. I don't see why it would not, but it's essentially if you turn in your paperwork late, which is not 30 days before your application or your permit has expired, we may assess up to a 10% penalty on you. You know that from filling out your application, submitting your permit, it's a lengthy process, and so is the renewal. And just to be honest, it's kind of unfair to us when you hand us, a 150-page renewal that includes a lot of financial documents 3 days before your permit is up, and you're like, I'm good, right? Well, maybe. And what that effect has been is some folks are operating on an expired permit in some cases, and we know that while we complete the review of their renewal application. So we would like to get those in at least 30 days before they are before your permit is up. Some other things in Title V that we're cleaning up, aligning with the state for the video surveillance requirements, clarifying language around nurseries, and a few other things. It's scheduled for probably going to be the end of July, like July 24th. Council goes on break July 4th through those next 2 weeks, and so I expect that to probably pop July 24th. Weights and measures. If the county has not come out and certified your scales that you are using, you should contact the state, because they can come out and perform that same function for you. So put that on your to-do list. I'd be willing to bet, because of our proximity to all the state bureaus, that all the Sacramento businesses are going to probably have a little bit quicker access to these types of services. Q&A. Everyone want to skip Q&A? Right. Right. June 25th.
Hi. This is not pertaining to anything that you've discussed yet, but I wanted to just get some feedback from you with regards to how you felt with regards to high times, and what was the reaction from the city council, and just general overall feedback. I'm interested.
Well, I try to never speak for the city council because that gets me in trouble very easily. But they thought it was great. No, I'll speak for myself. Well, I mean, so here's kind of like the stats, if you will. It was a 2-day event. There's approximately 20,000 people there over the 2 days. There were 5 medical transports, 2 for heat exhaustion within the first hour of the event by seniors, 1 fall, 1 pre-existing medical condition, and 1 that was labeled stomach issues. There was 1 arrest of somebody in the parking lot for an outstanding warrant for illegal gambling in Florida. And there was 1 fight in the parking lot by 2 people that were inebriated, who weren't attending the event, but hanging out in the parking lot. So I think as far as, events go, it was a fairly uneventful event. There were a whole host of infractions in terms of like the code by a variety of operators. We talked to the BCC in advance of the event, and kind of all agree that we're going to kind of observe and take notes as people were still kind of figuring this all out. But it ranged from little things like, giving free samples away. The other side of that very fine line was, a dab for a penny. I'm like, okay, so you're definitely not, okay, so it's no longer free, but now it's a penny. To manufacturing on site, but not with CO2 or ethanol. It was just a heat pressure press. So CAL FIRE kind of looked at that and they're like, all right, well, it's not going to blow up. So I think there's still room for need for education, but in terms of how bad it could have potentially been, it was uneventful. It was crowded getting out of the parking lot. What I heard on Saturday, which was the second day, was that when people were leaving on Friday, because I didn't stick around for the end of it on Friday, was that everyone was just very polite leaving the parking lot. It was a whole mess of cars getting out. The volleyball event, some parents were a little upset that they ended up sharing a parking lot with some folks for a period of time, but those events were about 1,500 feet apart in total and did have separate parking lots and ingresses and egresses. Prior to the event, a number of parents complained because someone had circulated an email that they believed to be true, which claimed that people were going to be smoking cannabis at the girls' volleyball event inside the whatever event hall, which was not part of the high times permit. I don't know if so I think once kind of that was squashed, as I understand it, generally the parents of the were okay with it. The organizers of the tournament signed off on it prior to the event taking place, and even went so far as to say that they had shared venues with other cannabis events before in a much closer proximity. But all in all, it was a pretty uneventful event, which was a good thing. It was just another concert with, people smoking cannabis, was not the first cannabis or concert with people smoking cannabis at it. So their state has issued a second permit this weekend, right? There you go.
Okay, I have one more question. You were talking about the taxes a little bit ago, the 4% operating tax. And I know that at the City Hall meeting a couple of weeks ago, they had just briefly mentioned the one where they were talking about whether or not to do high times here in Sacramento. And there's been a stay, to my understanding, with regards to where the tax money that's generated from our industry is going to be going. And I'm just wondering if you have any insight as to when meetings will be held, to when that's going to be discussed, where that's exactly allocated, and how do I get involved with that?
I will let you know as soon as I know.
Okay. Thank you.
Joe, right here.
Hey, Joe. How's it going? I have a couple of questions about the micro-business licensing. How many have been issued, or how many have submitted for the micro-business licensing? And I've tried helping out a couple companies, sending emails to find out how to submit said information, but haven't been able to find much. Could you give some clarification on that?
Yeah, so 0 have been issued. We don't have that permit available yet, and the date is
When will discussions
July?
be had on that?
in July. And so we're going to be going back to the policy committee, the law and legislation committee, probably in July.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Probably that same July 24th date.
Hi, Joe.
Hi.
One just point of clarification on the new regs that's probably more important to the audience than it is to the city, and that's the removal of the A&M designation. So if you guys didn't hear that, it's really, really good news. You don't have to decide whether you're going to have adult or medical. You can have everything and respond to market forces how you see fit. My question for you, Joe, was on the Type S, you said this for self-distribution for small manufacturers only. So if you want a transport-only license and you do anything that's not small manufacturing, you go for a T. But if you're a small manufacturer, you go for an S. I'm trying to understand the difference and where the cutoff is and everything.
The Type S is really for those small manufacturers that with gross receipts of $100,000 or less, right? That want to perform the functions of having their products tested and taxed.
Okay.
If you just want to do transport, you can either, if you're a cultivator manufacturer, you can get that transport only permit, but that doesn't come with the testing and taxation administrative privileges. Otherwise, if you want to distribute your own product, you just need to get one of the distribution permits.
Perfect. Thank you.
And you're absolutely right about the A&M. I should have mentioned that. It's nice to see the state copying Sacramento. Just saying.
Hey, Joe. We're a lab. We're going to be co-oping with a cultivator, and you mentioned earlier they have a security system inside and outside the facility. Do we need a separate camera for the lab?
For the lab?
Yeah.
So you're going to have your own premise. Yeah, I mean, the short answer to that is well, let's talk. I mean, I guess in theory, the new shared security would allow them, but it's part of a different. They need kind of like, I think I need to think that one through a little bit more, because those functions are supposed to be remain separate. Let's talk. I think I think it's a definite maybe.
Okay.
Oh yeah. So cultivation doesn't allow the shared facilities. So you're gonna have to have your own premise with your own security. Thank you.
So we can't co-op with a cultivator.
You need your own premise.
Oh, okay.
So you need your own suite, essentially.
We do have a separate suite.
Yep.
Yeah. It's separate. Also, you mentioned large duplicate sample holes. I missed that question on that.
Yeah, so there was a redundant field sample that was initially required as part of the initial draft regs. So it wasn't like a sample that testers would collect. It was essentially two, and then they would hold on one as kind of like a backup, and that's no longer needed.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
There was a lot of cannabis. Like at the end of the day, if you're testing a batch of like several hundred pounds, your redundant samples it's a lot of pot.
So I have a distribution company that's going to be assisting with several companies at this coming High Times event. And my question is, do I personally have to handle the money at each of them, wearing my badge stating that I'm the distributor? Or can I hire someone? I'm just trying to not jeopardize my license, basically, moving forward. And the state regs kind of, I don't know, it's open to interpretation. That's kind of why I want to bring it up now.
What do you mean by handle the money? Like you're not allowed to perform a retail function.
The distributor. The distribution company.
Yeah, you can't perform a retail.
No, I have
function.
a retail with each of them too, but
Okay.
But High Times was telling me that I have to physically be there to handle the money, and it didn't make any sense to me as well. That's why I'm asking this question, because High Times is telling me that I have to be there to handle the money, and I don't
For
know
the
why.
sale or for the collection of taxes?
For the sale. And and that leads me to another question. Do we have to pay an excise tax on what's sold at the event in addition to that 4 or 3%?
Yeah, the retail can't remit taxes, but distributor can't sell it to the consumer.
Okay, so I can tell High Times that I don't have to handle the money. That's up to the retailer license that goes with my license.
You can push your button. Yeah, you need to push your button.
Yeah, you still need to be there as a distributor, and because you will be handling the tax remittance part. Retail
And-
cannot do that.
And moving the product. What you're not going to be doing is performing the transaction with the customer.
Okay, so
But you
I
still have
I
to.
still have to be there.
Only if they want cannabis.
Understood. All right, thank you.
Otherwise, it's fine. They can sell T-shirts.
Hey Joe, my name's Dennis. Is the veteran program, is that still evolving? And do we still need to operate under a sole proprietor as far as you know?
Yes. And if you want changes to that, those changes really need to you need to make that request to the council. I've kind of exhausted I'll just say the staff level
Okay.
avenue on that.
Okay. Also, is there any like cup waivers or deferrals as far as you know for the veterans?
It's just the operating permit.
Just the business operating permit. Okay. And that's separate from the equity program, right? The veteran?
Correct. There's an existing statute of the B&P code that I can't remember off the top of my head, 16102. There you go. So I was looking at you. That we're utilizing for that particular fee waiver.
Hi, just wanted to confirm with a nursery cultivator that essentially they just need a transporter with a transport license, and that can go directly from the cultivation site to the dispensary because it's not subject to the excise tax And as far as I'm aware, there's no legal requirement to go through a distributor. I'm just wanted to be clear on that. The cultivator of like immature plants can have those transported and sold directly to the dispensary.
Yeah, your nursery allows you to sell directly to the dispensaries, but you need that transport permit.
Right. Okay.
Hi, Joe. Whoa, this is loud. You casually mentioned that there might be a delivery cap coming now in District 6. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the delivery application process has closed. And therefore, I'm not really, it's still open, so people can still apply for delivery. Okay.
It's never closed.
And what is the reasoning behind prohibiting delivery in District 6?
Well, it's not prohibiting delivery. It's the request has been to limit the number of delivery-only dispensaries within the Power and Alliance area.
Because?
I think that I don't want to speak for them. I think that they have concerns around delivery as a whole, and so I think they have some concerns over
Not
it.
due to undue concentration.
I don't want to speak on their behalf.
You guys have already taken away cultivation, and distribution got lumped into that cap as well. So limiting deliveries, I don't represent any delivery companies. However, I know what a struggle they're all going through, especially considering they only require maximum 1,000 square feet. So it's very difficult for them to find property. And I think we should be trying as a city to make it easier for them, not harder.
Hey, Joe.
Hey.
So on the RFP for the equity program, are you planning on having that happen, having the RFP for the equity program released before the disparity study?
No, it would be after the June 12th council action.
So the disparity study will be after the RFP is released?
No.
So first comes the study, and then comes the
RFP would be
RFP
released after the council action on the 12th.
Okay, but when will the study be released?
June 8th. Yeah, it's an exhibit to the attachment of the fee waiver reso, so it'll come out that Thursday.
So they'll happen both together?
The resolution for the fee waiver will contain two attachments. One will be a description of the core program itself, and then the second is the study.
Okay. And so in the resolution for the fee study, or the resolution for the fee waiver, will there be criteria for qualifications in that resolution?
Yeah, that'll be contained in the attachment that describes the core program.
Okay. And that's all on June 7th?
It's that Thursday before the 12th.
Okay.
Like the 8th, maybe?
Okay. And so are we not having a council meeting next Tuesday, June 5th? I know it's probably a stupid question, but I just want to.
No. So there's council. So if you ever thought about working for the city council, they have meetings every Tuesday, except for Tuesdays in July and 2 Tuesdays in December. This coming Tuesdays is moved to the Thursday because of the election.
Okay, got it. All right, thanks.
Otherwise, it never stops.
Joe, so I've been to a lot of these meetings, and I have never heard anything on the sale of seeds or pollen, anything that's not THC active, but cannabis related, I guess.
Cannabis pollen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, ask me that question next month, and I'll I'll have an answer for you. I got nothing on
Seeds
pollen,
as well.
man.
Seeds as well.
Seeds have to. I have to go back and reread that. A nursery, I know, deals in seeds. Is I think dispensaries. Can a dispensary sell seeds?
Yes.
Yeah. There you go. Not that I don't trust you, but Sophia, can a dispensary sell seeds? I got one yes and one I don't know. Ask me. Yeah, send me an email. I can probably get the seed answered tomorrow. The pollen one, I don't even know what that is, man. So
For male plants. So
Okay.
for breeding.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it coming like in a jar? All right. You need to tell me whatever was so funny after the meeting. Okay.
How's it going, Joe? Josh Jenkins, Lowell Penguin Incorporated. What's the projected utilization date for the equity program, given the projected dates on the study and the resolution for fee waiver?
Fee waiver, resolution will go into effect immediately because it's a resolution. Provided that everything goes smoothly, the RFP would be released potentially as soon as the following day on June 13th. It would be out for a period of time. Generally, RFPs are out for somewhere between 30 and 60 days. So.
Not generally. We already talked about this before. There's a possibility for a 14-day RFP. So I guess my question is, why is the city delaying the implementation of the equity program further? Please let me.
Okay.
So the equity program's already been delayed, and we talked about this back in September was the first time you talked about it, and we're not even going to get a utilization of this veteran equity and the veteran piece of being able to apply to the Small Business Entrepreneur Center. And we're trying to grow the veteran entrepreneurs. I mean, how much further are we going to be shifted back on that implementation of the equity program?
So the RFP for the time that the RFP is going to be out is not going to be 14 days because it's $1 million RFP.
Okay.
And generally,
you've been doing it since September.
generally, those RFPs of that high a value are out for no fewer than 60 days, and so 30 days would be a compressed timeline on
Okay, so
like
30-day
this.
compressed timeline. When are we still talking about the utilization of that?
Well, then there's an award period, so it's. And I can send you. Okay, so 30 days, June. July, August. So we're probably looking at August.
So August. Okay. So we're now at August. All right. And yeah, I mean, by all means, please send anything, info@lowellpenguin.com. Love to talk about that. And the working with the city council to get the 16102 treatment fully afforded, not just for sole proprietorships, not just for 100% owned entities. 51% is where the equity line is. When you're not talking about disabled veterans. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep. So the council appealing them directly would be the most direct way, or most maybe effective way of doing that. I hear you.
Hey, Joe, can you talk generally about the pathway to micro business, and with the loss of 2 license types in District 6, is that going to preclude any future applications for micro business if you don't already have 2 of them?
So we haven't lost the 2 business types. They just didn't go away. It's just being capped at 2.5 million square feet. It's going to no doubt complicate potential micro businesses looking to enter and operate in the Power and Alliance space. there's kind of no way around it unless you're already in with your cultivation application. It's going to present some challenges. Trying to get the micro business completed as quickly as we can. Our internal processes are meant to be bureaucratic, and so that staff report has to be approved by everybody, including legal, 19 days before it gets uploaded. Which pushes, if it was done right now, makes it in the middle of June, which they're going to be on recess. And so it's a challenge. I'm moving as quickly as I can on the micro, on all of it, to be honest. But I understand the need for micro licenses, or certainly the desire for them.
Joe, this is kind of a repetitive question here, but just listening to this gentleman's question, a veteran, say we have a C Corp with 100% equity by the veteran, there's no other equity in the corp, would that qualify for the RFP, or it has to absolutely be a sole prop?
Right now, it has to be a sole proprietor. And so, again, I'm not trying to punt this one. I'm telling you who to go to get the change, and it's not me, right? So I need the people that sit behind me on Tuesday nights to tell me to open it up to LLCs or LLCs with a certain percentage of ownership.
Okay.
Hey, Joe, over here. Hi. Just curious as to what the current estimated lead time is for people who are currently submitting their BOPs.
BOPs still aren't the lag. It's the conditional use permit.
So if an applicant is applying with a place that already has the CUP in place and approved, does that mean that their application should have a response sooner than later?
Yeah, so we've been trying to process the applications in kind of a couple of ways. One, for registered cultivators, we wanted to kind of go through their applications and have them ready and really understand kind of who they are and what they were doing and how they're doing it, because they were operating with the understanding that we wouldn't be issuing it, ironically, until they get their certificate of occupancy, because we need that BOP as kind of be the carrot and the stick for be compliant with fire and all the other building codes. The other folks that are doing these build outs aren't operating. So we're trying to time everybody as to not cause any delays to their business. But so if you have moved into a building that has a CUP, we'll do our best to process it in a timely manner.
Thank you.
Anybody else have questions?
Hey, what's the latest with Type S shared facilities as far as kitchens go for edible makers or anything like that? And because as far as I know, there's nothing like that out here in Sacramento. It's pretty much impossible to find anywhere. In order to start a business, I gotta buy a warehouse or a piece of land and build something. The other kind of, I guess second part of what I'm saying is, there's no low cost of entry into this business. If you don't already have tons of money, it's basically impossible to get into it. So Type S is my question. Kind of low entry is my, opinion, I guess.
Yeah, so I know that there's at least one being planned, maybe two being planned in Sacramento. I don't know the disposition of their CUP or their potential build out, but I know that there's a couple being planned. As to there's no real cheap way entry into this market. I think that was probably 10 years ago. That's a regulatory process, right? And it was adopted by was put out by the state, right? So there's we are one part of it, but this is in response to really around like the total, I think, kind of evolution of the industry, right? The days of making brownies in your home and selling them are over, right? The days of extracting cannabis from butane bought from Home Depot are over. The double-edged sword, legalization comes with regulation, and regulation means professionalism, which means standards like, ones that the fire department is going to make folks adhere to. Yeah.
Well, for someone to tell me that I can't be professional because I'm operating in a home.
Yeah, most of the Department of Public Health on that one. I mean, and technically edibles aren't even food, if you want to get into it. But it's, right, just like, yeah.
No, I understand.
I mean, I can't go, cook meals at home and, sell them to people, right? Nobody would buy those anyway, but.
You sure can, though, actually, under a certain amount of money.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions?
I know, I've got a whole hour. What am I going to do? Yes. I'll hang out and do questions. Thank you, folks.
So I have a quick question. And it's in regards to the commercial kitchens. So what if we added a commercial kitchen to a facility that already manufactures something else and does testing? The shared spaces.
You can't.
I mean, that's a low entry.
They're going to. DPH is going to require that it basically be a cannabis-only facility, right? So,
right.
If you're doing something else out of it, it's not gonna fly, right? So
okay. So it has to be all cannabis.
Correct. So
Okay.
it can't be cannabis,
And something else.
and something else. It's got to be once it goes cannabis, it has to only
Even
be
if
cannabis.
it's a separate suite?
No, if it's a separate suite and you have your own premise, that may work. But what you can't share is like the equipment and the instruments of that
Okay.
nature.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
So seeds. Everybody wants seeds. Okay.